When the Academy announced these guidelines, it gave visibility to the discussion. It created this exchange between, not only the industry, but it's also a conversation that has to be started with the whole society.
I think that it's really mainly a publicity stunt. That's how I read this. I don't think it changes anything. The categories are so loose and flexible.
I hope that these changes are part of a larger trend of the actual process of filmmaking becoming more thoughtful and more of an investment into various communities.
A lot of movies are actually made under these guidelines without actually knowing it beforehand.
I think that there is, having the criteria, but then it's the action that's taken to achieve that criteria. Just putting up a group of having actors with disabilities on, but not portraying them in an accurate way could actually be very harmful.
If you're asking a production community to access a skill set which historically they have not, we have to make sure that that skill set exists for them. So there's sort of two pieces going on at the same time. We want them to adopt. We also need to make sure that there's enough people being trained into the industry and available so that the supply chain kind of matches the demand.
Someone who hasn't already been approved of by the major gatekeepers. Like, if we can encourage financiers to take a risk on them by saying, look, the Academy is putting this out here. This means that the films by these people will now have a better chance of rising to the top. Then I think we have a better chance of getting them to invest. And all films, whether we like it or not, are businesses.
They identify 14 behind the scene positions on a production and only require 2 of those positions to be filled from the list below. I mean, 2 out of 14 is not great. So I wish that they focused on the positions that are rarely filled by women or people of color or people with disabilities, LGBTQ community.
And the way in which these rules are formulated as kind of a diversity checklist kind of pits, Asian against Black, African American, against Indigenous actors. It's like a checklist, and there's only room for one at the top. So which group is going to be represented above all others?
It's already kind of happening where if someone makes it in, they're usually the one and only, and they're often asked to be an expert on every other disability. Now, granted, you might be more aware of all the experiences and then have the connections to get the information, but to expect a single person to be able to speak for an entire population is really unfair and potentially setting up that person for failure.
A lot of countries do watch closely what the Academy does. So even if you're not making a film that it's created towards the Oscar race, since this has a huge impact, it becomes a very intense and high profile talk. It will have a cultural effect.
The Academy put this out there, good for them. But I think now it's our responsibility to really parse what is required to meet these standards and to push the tweaks that we think will actually result in change.